I've heard it again and again. I just don't get that much out of worship. And I've heard this again and again because I used to say it. So how to change this? In this video, I will show you 5 tools from the Evangelical Lutheran Hymnary that can help you prepare for worship. First, a caveat. The idea that I need to get something out of worship is probably not the best idea to have, because it makes church into into a product that I individually and personally consume. But church, the divine service, is where God feeds Christians together with His grace. Now, if you want to understand why we do what we do in the divine service, I've made some other videos on that, which you can check out at the link below. So what can you do to prepare for worship? Number 5, prayers for worship. A few lines taken from the Psalms make up the first prayer, which is a prayer that you can pray for before worship. Prayers, especially those taken from Scripture, give us the words to pray. What we wouldn't otherwise pray or ask for, these put in our mouths. And so they teach us to be thankful to God for what He has given to us, and they teach us to ask God for what He has promised. In addition to this prayer, there's a prayer to help you remember your baptism, which is the means by which you came into Christ Church. There's a prayer for before Holy Communion, after Holy Communion, and a prayer for the end of the divine service. Number 4, the glossary. Okay, this one may seem a little boring, but if you want to dig deeper, this is a way to do it. There's a lot of words that come up from time to time that are probably unfamiliar to us because, well, they're written in Latin or Greek. But just like if you're learning a new language, the first thing you'd want to do is to memorize the vocabulary. Same in church. These are words that sometimes don't have an equivalent in English, and we use a Latin or Greek in order to adequately express something. Other times they connect us to the church of all times and of all places, because the church has chosen to use these Latin or Greek terms instead of whatever is the common vocabulary or the common language of the people at that time or place. Number 3, read through the introit for the day. The introits, I think, are the most underrated thing in the hymnary. Some of the Lutheran Synod's hymnals didn't even include them. But the introit historically would be when the pastor would enter into the chancel area while the congregation was singing psalms appropriate for the day, and the service would officially begin. The introits in our hymnary start on page 142, and there's one chosen for every single Sunday and festival day of the church year. And they usually consist of an antiphon, a psalm, and finally the Gloria Patri. The introits set the stage for the rest of the service, and they introduce the theme of the day. In fact, for about half the church year, every Sunday has a proper name, and the name is taken from the first word of the introit in Latin. For instance, the third Sunday of Advent, when the rose or pink candle is lit, is called Gaudete Sunday, because the first word of the introit for the day is rejoice. And pink is used because pink is the color of rejoicing or joy. The same thing happens again on the fourth Sunday in Lent. And all throughout the church year, there's things like this that happen. So reading through the introit for the day will give you a great idea as to what will be focused on that day. Number 2, read through the collect for the day. The collects are prayers where the pastor collects all the thoughts and petitions of the people for the day centered around the theme of the day. There are 2 collects provided for every Sunday in our hymnary. The first is the historic collect, which in many cases date back to the 400s AD. The second are collects by Veit Dietrich, who was an associate of Martin Luther in the 1500s AD. And because these collects collect all the thoughts for the day, they are perfect to pray before worship. And even 500 or 1500 years later, these prayers still pack a punch, and they get right to the heart. They express the heartfelt desires of the Christian. And even though they may be read and written in formal language, doesn't mean they don't come from our hearts. In fact, sometimes they go deeper than what we would naturally be inclined to do. Finally, the best way to prepare for worship is to read through the lessons for the day. All of the lessons for every Sunday can be found in the lectionary tables in the front of the hymnary. There are 2 sets of lectionaries, the 3-year or ILCW and the historic or 1-year. In both lectionaries, the gospel lesson is intended to be the main focus for the day. So even just glancing at that will give you a great feel for the rest of the day. In the 3-year lectionary, many of the other lessons are continuous from week to week, meaning they may not have that much of a connection to the gospel lesson. But in the historic lectionary, all the lessons revolve around and reinforce the theme of the gospel. Even reading through the lessons just once before church should help you make some connections in the hymns that you'll sing that day, the Psalms, and yes, hopefully even in the pastor's sermon. So these are 5 ways to prepare using the tools available in the hymnary. Do you have other ways to prepare? Let me know, and please subscribe.